Welcome to the great debate. This is going to be somewhat of a short boxing bout, which may or may not end in a knockout. All right. Anshel, we're going to give you the honor of starting because you've just published a new book called Bibi, The Turbulent Life and Times of Benjamin Netanyahu. So give us the bottom line. What is your assessment of the Israeli Prime Minister, and how will he go down in history?
Well, thank you, Steve. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you.
For hosting this debate or something of that form. I think that when we assess Netanyahu, we have to first of all look at him as an extension, as an embodiment of Israel. And there's no question, I think, in the minds of anyone in this hall today, Israel's a mega success story of 70 years, thanks to the foundations laid down by the founding generations of Israel. And it's now those roots, those seeds that were sown are now bearing unimaginable fruit. And I think that the sad conclusion of both of my book and of this period in Israel's history is that the current leader of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is squandering much of that investment and that hard work that's been done over the last 70 years. There's no question Netanyahu is a brilliant strategist. He's an incredible analyst of geopolitics of the region, of the world. He understands macroeconomics like few people I've ever met. But at the same time, he's using all his skills and his incredible assets that he's inherited as a leader of Israel from previous generations of leaders. He's squandering them to maintain a status quo which is problematic for Israel, and to maintain his own political position by inciting communities in Israel against each other. And I think it's a tragedy because Netanyahu is not only such a talented leader, he had the potential to lead Israel to its next decades of growth and prosperity, to carry on the work done by those first leaders of Israel. And instead, he seems to be more or less standing put, not really going anywhere, maintaining the status quo. And a lot of people, including people here in the United States, try to portray Netanyahu as being an American, not really being Israeli. And I believe, and I write in my book, that that's totally wrong. Bibi is very much an Israeli. Yes, he speaks flawless English, and he was educated here. He spent many of his formative years here. But Bibi is also the embodiment of Israel. Bibi is the embodiment of that hybrid society of ancient phobias and high-tech hope, of that combination of tribalism and globalism, which is Israel. And that's very much Netanyahu himself. And that's why I think it's such a tragedy that Netanyahu hasn't fulfilled his incredible potential to be a groundbreaking leader, to take Israel forward to its next level, to its next generation. And instead, he's been a force for stagnation, for keeping Israel. I mean, Israel is certainly growing, it's improving, its economy is improving, the standing in the world is improving in many ways, the security is improving, but this is all mainly due to factors which are not under the Prime Minister's control.
Okay, Anshel, we're going to cut you there because I think you've made your point. Carolyn, I heard him use the word tragedy. Is Netanyahu a tragedy for Israel?
No. I think there is some truth to what Anshel said, which is that Netanyahu is very much an embodiment of much of what Israel is. And I think that what he embodies is the triumph of Israel. I think when you look at his extraordinary record in office from the time that he was actually here in New York at the UN through his first tenure as prime minister and on to the current 3 tenures that he's been doing continuously, you see that he's transformed Israel's economy. You talk about what he's built upon the foundations of Israel's founding generation. That's absolutely true. And he's pushed us forward in a way that nobody has done, really, I would argue, since Ben-Gurion. I think he's the most significant historical figure in Israel since Ben-Gurion. I think that, depending on how long he remains in office, he may actually even surpass him in terms of the impact he's had. Now, what I do think is that when you talk about stagnation or whatever, what you're really doing is saying that what Netanyahu has not done is advance the aspirations of the Israeli left. Well, that's true because he's not a leftist. So, if you are judging him by whether or not he advances the agenda of the side that he's not associated with in the public debate, then I guess he could be considered a failure. After all, he's not a leftist prime minister. He's a center-right prime minister, which is the position of the vast majority, not the vast majority, but a very large and significant majority of Israelis. So I think that from that perspective, you know, he lives the gestalt, and he's also led it. Because, I mean, what was, the other day, yesterday at Shabbat, I was at a lunch with somebody who had been on the board of directors of Bank Ha'Poalim, during the 1990s, during Netanyahu's first tenure in office, where he was the spearhead of the privatization of the state-owned banks and state-owned companies. And this was a short and much thought of as a failed tenure in office, those 3 years from 96 to 99. But in fact, I mean, those 3 years were the beginning of the transformation of Israel's economy from a sclerotic socialist backwater into a free market economy. And those transformative steps that he began then, he only expanded both during his tenure as finance minister and then subsequently when he returned to the prime minister's office. So I think, you know, there's projection going on here of the Israeli left. They consider him to be a failed leader because he's not theirs. And that's just the way it is. He wasn't elected by the left doesn't support him, and therefore they consider him not to be good because he doesn't reflect what they want with the Palestinians. And finally, one last thing. Yeah, I don't understand how you can look at what Netanyahu has done, leaving aside the economic engine that he's propelled forward, which is Israeli society, by empowering the people with free market principles and the transformation of our economic regulations in Israel and the basis of our economic growth to the private sector. But beyond that, I mean, look at the diplomatic blossoming of Israel over the past 5 years. I mean, this is something that nobody foresaw. And he took advantage of a situation, as any responsible statesman would do, where he saw that the Arabs and the Israelis were both looking in shock at the Obama administration as they were being abandoned one by one in favor of building a U.S. alliance with Iran on the backs of U.S. allies. So he used that as a basis for forging ties that nobody ever would have conceived of with the Arab world, to advance common strategic aims against Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, when you have Egypt cooperating with Israel, together with the Saudis and the UAE in 2014 during Operation Cast Lead against Hamas, you see that there's something very significant going on the ground. And the person who did that was Netanyahu. And finally, he did the one thing that the left never did, which was said, no, Israel's diplomatic standing isn't about whether we make peace with the PLO or not and sufficiently appease them by giving up parts of our country. No, rather, it's supposed to be a reflection of what we can offer the world. And so you see Israel's burgeoning ties in Africa and Latin America, even in Eastern and Central Europe, and in other places throughout the world that nobody ever thought of. And this is a result of a vision of Israel, which is correct and proper and had been held in abeyance by the fake peace process for 2 decades, who said, wait a minute, people aren't coming to us because we're supposed to make peace with the Palestinians. They're coming to us because we have something to offer them, and we're an extraordinary country.
Carol, let me
respond to that. So,
Anshel, before you respond to that, let's pick up on that peace process. Is there...
Hi.
Okay. Anshel, how do you see a resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and can President Trump actually make what he calls the ultimate deal?
Sure. Let me just very quickly respond to 2 points that Karen said, and I'll get to that.
But very quickly.
First thing, I agree that Netanyahu has made excellent use of the economic situation and of the diplomatic situation, but in both cases, he's been using things that have been done by others. Israel's neoliberal current economics have been put in by Shimon Peres in 1985. Those are facts. Those are Israel's economic history. And the foundation for Israel's high-tech boost was in 1993 by Yitzhak Rabin when he authorized the money for the first venture capital funds. And Bibi has been fantastic at taking advantage of what his predecessors have done. The question is, what is he doing to help his successors? And Bibi doesn't see any successors because he only sees himself as a prime minister. He can't believe in anyone else, which leads to Steve's question about a solution for the conflict between Israel and Palestine. And Netanyahu has the best Netanyahu has the most incredible opportunity that any prime minister any Israeli prime minister has ever had. Israel is now engulfed is now surrounded by countries which are basically broken down, broken regimes. There is no real enemy to Israel, certainly not on its borders. Israel can now go forward and use this incredible opportunity to actually forge a new relationship with the region. There are, and nobody can escape the fact, 5 million Palestinians living within the area between the Mediterranean and the Jordan. They're not going to go anywhere. Israel has to find some kind of a way to live with them, to some kind of, you don't have to call it peace, but it has to find a way not to oppress these people, not to occupy them, and they are being occupied, even if you say, well, we can't occupy a country. And this is the opportunity. Bibi has now an incredible opportunity. He doesn't have an American administration pressuring him. The Saudis, who are the most powerful Arab nation right now, have basically said, we don't care about the Palestinians anymore. We're much more concerned about Iran. We want to cooperate with Israel and the US against Iran. Now is the opportunity to try and work out Israel's future and not keep the problematic status quo. And this is what Netanyahu is squandering, this incredible opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Let the man make his point.
No, I agree with Anshel. I think that now is the opportunity to change the status quo. You have the U.S. State Department. Do you understand what just happened last week? The U.S. State Department stopped calling Judea and Samaria occupied West Bank. It's not occupied. It's not occupied.
It is, but the people are. Are the people occupied?
Not at all. They're my neighbors. And the thing of it is, they've been living under Palestinian control since 1996. At a certain point, you have to say, somebody else